Yo, what's up guys? Miss Water here, and I'm making a new video today. I was thinking for a long time what I should make a video on, and finally it hit me. I wanted to make a video on gears, right? Now you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about? Here's the gear. In healing, I believe that all healers should know what gear they're in. So for example, I think there's 5 gears. And if I can find the paper that I was just working on this entire time, here we go. Alright. So I believe there's 5 gears. There's a gear when there's almost nothing to heal. Then there's kind of what I call the mana neutral gear, right? That's second gear. That's kind of like you're healing, but you're spending the same amount of mana that you're regenning, right? It's not hard healing at all. There's the slow burn, gear 3. This is where like you officially start spending more mana than you're regenerating. Slow gear the slow burn gear 3 by definition is kind of like if you were to slow burn from the first second of the fight to the very last second, it would be perfectly using your mana. So you are officially using your mana faster than you're regenerating, but you're using it in such a way that when the fight ends, you're at 0, right? So if you imagine what that would look like in your head, that's a slow burn. We spend most of our time slow burning in fights. Gear 4, I call this gassing. This is officially when shit has hit the fan and you are spamming pretty hard. You're still not like ook all the way in, fully spamming, but you're spamming pretty hard. The raid is dying. It's probably burst damage, or through misfortune, maybe there's healers that are dead, or something bad is happening in the fight that's causing you to have to spam a lot. This is gassing. And the final gear, gear 5, panic mode. You never want to be here. No one wants to be in panic mode. This is where like the whole raid's dying. It's probably at the last like 10% of the boss HP. Everybody's just yelling, kill it, kill it, kill it, right? Like, this is like the worst moment. Nobody wants to be here. Sorry, the music's super loud. Okay. I turned it down on my end. Okay, so we're going to go over these gears. Oh, I mean, you guys can't even see what I'm talking about, but that's fine. Let me just, there we go. Now, I'm going to put a link in the description of this, but I added this to my gear page, so if you were already looking at that, you can just see it pretty easily here, right? But the gears for Mistweaver are quite a bit different than your average healer. I would say for your average healer, we'll probably use Holy Priest and Resto Shaman as like the most traditional average healer. First gear for a Resto Shaman would probably be just like probably honestly just doing damage, probably just lightning bolting, doing something that doesn't cost mana, maybe throwing up the occasional healing rain or riptides, but there's nothing to heal, so you're not really trying to spend mana. Second gear, where this is mana neutral mode, this would probably be represented as like the occasional healing rain, riptiding on cooldown, and probably healing wave spamming, right? Those typically won't use really any mana at all. And so for Holy Priest, this would be like heal spamming, maybe some renews, palms on cooldown. Nothing too crazy, right? You're not flash heal spamming, you're not prayer of healing, Slow burn, this would be like your occasional prayer of healing. You get the point, right? So this is a video obviously for Mistweavers. So what do the gears mean for a Mistweaver, right? This is how if you guys are ever wondering what I'm thinking about when I'm healing, this is how my brain works. I organize the fight into gears, and I have to shift into a different gear as the fight requires. And so I have essentially 5 rotations memorized in my brain. And I ask in the situation basically, what gear am I in? What's the situation require? And I want to always try to convince myself that it's a lower gear, and I'll always begrudgingly upshift or into like a higher gear. You don't want to shift into a higher gear unless the fight requires it, right? Because anytime you're spent spamming more spells and not, trying to get resets is long-term HPS loss. Okay, and so here's the gears. We'll go over them. This might be a long video, hopefully not. The first one is treading water. This is the easiest the fight will ever be. Everyone's fault. This is probably the beginning of the fight or during certain lulls. Maybe where the boss is phasing. I don't know. Something's going on where you're not having to actually do a lot of healing. Everyone's relatively full. I put if the rate is above 85% health and they're not expected to take big damage soon. You should really not be casting at all during this. Just focus on maintaining and extending your hots. The only thing you should be doing during this moment is focusing on a rising sun kick, guys. Like, basically, here's your rotation, right? Rising sun kick, blackout kick, tiger palm, blackout kick, and the triple tiger palm. You know, obviously with different levels of haste, this might change. With higher haste, you would drop this third tiger palm here because you're officially hitting the probably the GCD cap often, right? So, or maybe with lower haste, you might have to add an extra tiger palm here at the end, or something. But the reason I wrote kind of two sets of rotations is because this is kind of how I think of it in my head, right? The first set is the non-renewing mist set. So rising sun kick, blackout kick, tiger palm, blackout kick, tiger palm, tiger palm, tiger palm, and then rising sun kicks back off cooldown again, and you go back into it again. Except with one exception this time. This is where you're going to be throwing up your renewing mist. So you rising sun kick, blackout kick, you're fishing, tiger palm, blackout kick, still fishing. You didn't get the reset, cool. Now you're renewing mist, and then any time left over, you're gonna tiger palm right before rising sun kick comes off cooldown again. Now you'll notice the only spell we're casting here that's a healing spell is renewing mist. This is purely putting in. You're essentially building up during this moment. You're stacking. You're trying to keep what hots you have up remaining, hopefully at a neutral time, or preferably if you get lucky resets, you're adding time to those hots, right? You don't want to. Oh, here's the thing: you never want a renewing mist when rising sun kicks cooldown is greater than 50%. That's time for trying to fish for resets. You always want to reset when rising sun kick was just used, right? That's why it goes rising sun kick into immediate blackout kick to fish for the super lucky 15% chance to reset it. If that fails, you go for a tiger palm into another blackout kick for a 30% chance. So a 15 into a 30% chance. Now that's a 45% chance to get a reset. Half the time you will have received the reset by this point, in which case you start the rotation back at the start here. Okay? It always comes back to this moment. And if you can get through this rotation and to this rotation, I just fucked that up, but where's that new button? You can get through this rotation, then you go to this one, right? Now, sometimes you might get so lucky where you keep restarting the rotation that Rim doesn't get used for a long time. This is fine as long as you don't reach 2 charges, okay? If you always want to revert back to this one if you start to get too many charges, right? You need to put renewing mist out, but there is no rush. I mean, if you think about it, you have 18 seconds to renewing mist, because it's a 9-second cooldown and they go to 2 charges. So use those 18 seconds to apply the renewing mist when it works for you, right? People oftentimes will stop whatever they're doing every single time renewing mist comes out to immediately apply it. This is actually wrong. That could have been precious reset time. If, for example, I was the rising sun kick and then used the next global for renewing mist, this would be very bad because that should have been blackout kick. Because blackout kick could have immediately got a reset there. Okay? So, yeah. Alright, moving on, guys. Okay. Gear 2. Coasting, aka mana neutral mode. This is going to look just like Gear 1 for us, which is different than most healers. This is where we want to spend about 80% of the fight, preferably. Although, we don't get to spend 80% of the fight here. This is where you want to spend 80% of your fight in. This is where the rate is around 60 to 85% health, or and the damage that they're taking in the next 20 seconds isn't like anything scary, right? Your HOTS should be able to heal up most of this. Your other healers will, I'm sure, find plenty to heal during this moment. You'll still kind of look low on the healing meter, that's fine. This is where the majority of you guys and other healers will fuck themselves. Okay, no offense. This is where you guys will see people at 60%, at 85%, be like, oh, I need to heal them. And you'll waste valuable globals that should have been spent on resetting the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick, and you'll spend them on Vivifies. Or you'll AFK, or I don't know. Basically, there's never a chill moment for us in a fight. We should always be focusing on kicking, resetting, increasing, right? Always. This is be a moment where rest of the shamans are chilling, just using Riptide, healing wave, efficient heals. For us, it's going to be the exact same as Gear 1, with one exception. You're ready at any point in time to shift to Gear 3, which means Vivifies, right? So try not to Vivify in this moment. Try to chill and just let your HOTS do the work and keep stockpiling. It's gonna take a lot of restraint, to not just like call out for an innervate and immediately top the raid. It's going to take a lot of knowing the fight. Hopefully you've done the fight multiple times, and when there's big damage that's not going to come out, just chill. Just chill. Wait for Gear 3 or 4. Alright, Gear 3. This is what I call the slow burn. You are officially losing mana. You're hemorrhaging mana instead of gaining it. This is where the raid is around 45 to 60% health. Yeah. As I said before, I like to think of this mode as if you had started the fight in slow burn and ended a slow burn, it would be the perfect fight, right? This would be like the parse fight. This is where you're going to use some spells. This is for the average healer, mind you, not Mistweaver. Okay, there's a difference. You don't want the fight to be slow burn. You actually want the fight to be a mixture of gassing, and panic modes, and treading, and coasting. You actually never want the fight to be in Gear 3, and I'll explain here in a second. Basically, as a Mistweaver, you only want two modes, spending and building, okay? You want to be building up Renewing Mist for the entire fight, and you want to have very short, very intense spending moments where you're essentially auctioning off those Renewing Mists. You're spending those on Vivifies, because as your Vivifies spamming, what's your Renewing Mist doing? They're ticking down, they're falling off. They're say goodbye. Hasta la vista. So you need to make sure that all that time you spent building them up is worth it, right? Which is why I usually try to combine those with moments of innervate or, moments where you can use, for example, why is my mind not working? World Vein Major. World Vein Major, when you go to spin in a Gear 4 or 5 moment, God tier. That's when you want to use it, right? But yeah, let's talk about Gear 3. So this is where the rotation can mix up a little bit, right? So for this, your rotation might be like Rising Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, right? So you're still fishing for multiple resets, and then begrudgingly Vivify, and then to maybe a Tiger Palm if there's extra time. The next set will be RSK, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Renewing Mist, right, for REM, Vivify / EM. So this would be a time when, if you're keeping enveloping mist on the active tanks, assuming you have the required amount of haste, which I'll go into at the end of this, and then finally ending with another Tiger Palm. So you're mixing essentially a few Vivifies in, and what are you losing? You're taking out the tail end of the Tiger Palms, which would have rolled on to your next Rising Sun Kick when you Blackout kicked, right? So essentially you're losing extra chance on your first Blackout kick of the next rotation, right? Which sucks, but it's the price, right? You have to pay. I mean, you have to heal the raid. The raid's dying. It's a slow burn. The raid is taking damage. You are expected to help out and heal. Now, in most cases, and I stress this, it's a difficult thing, but in most cases, it is worth to pretend like this is a Gear 2 moment. So essentially, you are slacking. You're sandbagging on purpose, allowing your other healers to pick up the slack. This is something you need to be very careful about, okay? Because you have to realize why you're doing it, and there better be a good moment. For example, I do Gear 2 when I should be doing Gear 3 on Mount all day long, because I know during the transition, it'll have worked, it'll paid off, right? Because everybody's killing themselves on the Reflect Shield. You guys have to be very careful about pretending to be in Gear 2 moment when it's really a Gear 3 moment. But yeah, This is also a really good time to revival, so it allows you to stay in gear 1 or 2, or at least pretend it's gear 1 or 2. In this mode, an innervate would almost entirely be wasted. Okay, guys, I really can't stress this enough. In a slow burn moment where the raid's like at around half or above half health, this is not when you want to get innervated, especially if there's not big damage that's about to come in, because you'd only cast like 2 or 3 or 4 vivifies, and then that's that. You've pretty much wasted the majority of the innervate. Sometimes I accidentally get innervated during this mode, and it can look really hilarious because it can be a combination of this right here or gear 2. So some people will look at my logs and be like, what the heck? He got innervated, but he only cast like 2 vivifies during it, or like 3 or 4, and it just looks really silly. But those are innervates I probably didn't call for. Or I shouldn't have called for, I guess is a better way to put it. Okay, let's talk about gear 4. This is the gassing phase, the gassing mode. It's officially go time. This is what all of you've been saving up and cultivating your crops for. Okay, things have become serious. The raid is dying, and your lesser experienced healers will be panicking. This is true. This is where you get to carry. The gear. This gear is where people can die if they aren't topped quickly. So you need to be making sure that your vivified targets are the lowest health targets, so they get that little extra heal. But there's a little bit of a risk to that. In that it's more of a gear 5 issue, but if you're about to heal somebody and they die, that can become a lot of wasted time, especially if your current haste levels are unfortunately low. I mean, you could lose as much as a second, 1.25 seconds of invested time because you're going to heal somebody, vivify, and then they die, and then you've essentially wasted 1.25 seconds, and because you wasted that time, maybe you go to heal somebody else and they die because they didn't receive that heal that they were expecting to get from you. It's a snowball effect, but ultimately there's no really point in talking about it. But typically, healers will actually sometimes not heal the lowest health person because they expect that person to die and they don't want to get caught into a chain cycle of constantly spamming spells on people that die before they actually get hit with them. And this is a situation that can happen to healers. The very best healers will heal the second to lowest health person, all while riding off the lowest health person. So, if you're the lowest health person in the raid, it's actually a very dangerous area to be in if there's other low health people, because no one's going to heal you. They've already written you off. Okay. So gear 4, gassing. The raid is around 25 to 45% health. I wrote, this is what you've trained for. The reason you've been so lazy, the reason you were pretending to be in gear 2 the whole time. So this is when you want innervates, because gear 5 is a little too risky for the innervates. And it might be during like high movement phases too. Gear 4 is typically the greatest area to be in with innervates, and you want to get an innervate when the raid's around like 1/3, and hopefully you spam through a big damage moment too, because your innervate window can easily top a raid solo. I mean, assuming you have pretty decent haste levels, you can easily top a raid during an innervate window single-handedly. It's pretty nuts. But here's situation 1. This is without innervate. You Rising Sun kick, Blackout kick, Tiger Palm, Blackout kick into 3 vivifies, right? So you'll notice even in the gear 4, the raid is at a 3rd health. You're still fishing. You're still spending the first 4 globals either Rising Sun kicking or fishing for Rising Sun kick. You're still spending like half your life fishing for resets or resetting, despite the situation. Okay, that's how crazy it is. Okay. Now, if you are innervated, you don't want that innervate to go to waste. So you got to make sure you put that to good use. So you'll Rising Sun kick, Blackout kick, and essentially instead of Tiger Palming and Blackout kicking, so the 3rd and 4th global, the 3rd and 4th global are used for extra vivifies. So this will be essentially Rising Sun kick, Blackout kick into 5 vivifies. And then the next set will be Rising Sun kick, Blackout kick, putting up the Renewing Mist, Vivify, Vivify, Vivify. And then I wrote Vivify / EM here. If you have extra time on your innervate, and you don't want that extra mana to go to waste, which is fair, you could use the tail end, assuming you've topped the raid, for some Enveloping Mist. And because you always want an Enveloping Mist right before RSK comes back up to immediately increase its time, because to go from a 7-second hot to an 11-second hot guarantees that it'll see another extend after that, right? Which then will put it to a 15-second hot, which might allow it to see another kick, so it's actually a 19-second hot. It's kind of weird, but EMing right before RSK is the play. Now, one thing to know, if you EM and you RSK too early, it will actually not extend the duration of EM. EM has a 0.25 second travel time. Didn't know if you guys knew that. But you can accidentally RSK too fast. You can Rising Sun kick too fast and it will not extend the duration of EM. Okay. This is what we kind of already talked about here. Okay. Oh yeah. So during this mode, you still are kind of holding out and thinking that there's going to be extra time left to the fight. And I'll explain later on when like the boss is really low health, how like your rotation will change. But this is assuming that the boss's health is like 10% or higher. You're still kind of holding out and you're still fishing for that first reset. I mean, right here, you could be innervated, guys, and it's a stage 4 or gear 4 moment. And if you get that reset, you will still push RSK. Like, it's crazy, but you might just end up RSK, black kicking RSK, black kicking RSK, black kicking for like the first half of your enveloping. Sorry, first half of your innervate if you get innervated. But that's just the way it goes. Okay. Gear 5. This is panic mode. This is full burn. Everything in your kit, everything you have. The rotation's probably gonna have to be on the back burner. But there still is a rotation for it, but it's hilariously simple. You don't really want to be in this mode actually, because you're pretty much going to lose all of your long-term healing. So you only want to be in this mode typically at the end of a fight. But sometimes you're forced here against your will, especially during prog. So we'll just get to it. This is basically when the raid is below 25% HP, or the damage that's coming in is so hard and so fast that if you stop spamming for any second, the raid will die. This is where you use your defensives, your life cocoons. Yeah, you don't want to panic in this mode and just start randomly shitting out random essence fonts, because it won't be good. This is where you want to try to hopefully stay calm, and the rotation becomes very simple. You RSK, and then every global is Vivify, or you RSK, Renewing Mist, and then every other global is Vivify. Even in the most dire of circumstances, guys, you are still Rising Sun kicking on cooldown. This doesn't actually change. So this rotation here of the 2 sets, this doesn't even change. You get innervated, obviously, because you're already casting Vivifies the whole time. Now you might find a situation in which it's worth it to cast Enveloping Mist instead of Vivifies, and this is if your haste is really high. Then you could be putting out Envelopings on individuals that are taking vastly more damage than everybody else, but that's some high level play that I will allow you to try. Yeah, you don't want to be in this gear for long. The idea is that all of that saving and building up from the first 3 gears has allowed you to get out of this gear as soon as possible. For me, I'll typically have at least 10 Renewing Mists at all times, and then anywhere from 3 to 8 Vivifies will pretty much rescue the raid and propel them up back to Gear 4 or Gear 3 or Gear 2. For those of you with less haste, this might require more Vivifies, but beware, you will be using a lot of mana in Gear 5, and sometimes you just kind of have to stop. Like the second you get them out of Gear 5, you need to take a chill pill and go back to Gear 4 or Gear 3. It's really important that you guys dynamically shift from one gear to the next at a rapid rate. The second the raid is rescued, try to shift back to Gear 4, Gear 3, or wherever you're at, right? Just try to always be asking myself, what gear am I in, and what am I supposed to be doing in that gear? Now, all of this kind of goes out the window if the boss is like under 5 or 10% health. At this point, you kind of just treat the last 5 to 10, 15 seconds of the fight as Gear 5 always, and you're just spamming, obviously. Whether to pad or save the raid, there's no reason not to just sort of auction off all of your mana, spend it all, and just do as much healing in the last few seconds as you can, right? Okay, so I have a little special tidbit at the end of this video, which I guess I could probably save for another video, but fuck it, we'll throw it in. Haste, breakaway, breakpoint rotation changes. What a mouthful. Okay, so I've tried to explain this, and it is very difficult, but hopefully we'll explain it here. Your rotation will change depending on how much average haste you have. So average haste is how essentially your haste while you're standing still, raid buffed, but also including the average haste you receive from all of your procs. So for example, let's say I have a proc that gives me 100 haste. It's up for 30% of the time. 30% of 100 is 30. I would add that 30 haste to my average haste, and that becomes my new average of haste. So I did this with my character on every single haste proc, and I have something like, I don't know, like 11 or 12 or 14 haste procs, like a lot of them, right? Added them all up together, times it by their uptime, whatever, added that to my new total, factored in my expedience, all that shit, and I found out that I was for a long time at 100%, 110% average haste. I'm now more around like 121, 22% haste, which is, obviously a lot. So yeah, figure out what your average, guys, is, and then you can look at this kind of chart and see how it might affect you. If you're under 70%, what I explained is the go-to. This is for the big boys with a lot of haste, right? So when you reach 70 to 80% haste club, this is where you're going to want to try to keep up one enveloping mist on the active tank at all times. Simply replace the last Vivify in one of the sequences with an enveloping mist. So then it becomes enveloping mist, and the next spell you cast will be Rising Sun Kick. Be careful not to Rising Sun Kick immediately after you do the enveloping mist, because it will not extend the duration, because I explained that bug from before. Essentially, enveloping mist has travel time, and so it'll be traveling, and then you RSK, and then it won't get extended because it hasn't actually reached its target yet. It's very stupid. All right, if you get into the average 90% haste club or more, I call this the Chad club. This is where you're going to want to start keeping up 2 enveloping mist on both tanks at all time. If you're not one tank in a fight, or if one tank is out of commission for whatever reason, simply replace the second tank's enveloping mist and put it on yourself instead. So you'll have 1 enveloping mist on the active tank and 1 enveloping mist on yourself, and these should be maintained the entire time. Replace Vivifies if you have to keep up these EMs, because they will last for probably like 30 plus seconds, and they'll be doing a lot of healing. It'll be worth it. If you keep an enveloping mist on yourself, this will allow you to stand and poop on the ground, and like Hive Mind, for example, and you'll pretty much always be top despite standing in bad shit, which is kind of the dream, you don't even want to have to think about mechanics if you can just like stand in dumb shit that doesn't kill you. Fuck it, why not? Alright, the next club bracket is the 110% haste club. There might only be like, I don't know, double-digit numbers of people in the world at this moment right now with that much haste, but I'm going to mention it because in the future you guys will probably hit this with enough expedience. This is officially the point where you want to keep up 3 to 5 enveloping mists at all times. 2 on the tank, 1 on yourself, and then the other 2 on people that are typically taking dot damage. And remember, the rules from above apply. You always want it to be the last spell in your sequence before you RSK, so you get that full min-max extension on the duration of enveloping mist, right? Typically, the extra enveloping mist that I'll put up on the raid will be on what I call the problem children. They're like the bad players, the players that just never can dodge anything, the ones who have a dot on them, or just a fucking nuisance, right? There's always a couple people in the raid that just take way more damage than everybody else. Keep an enveloping mist on them, and they'll never die, and they'll start to think they're really good, and that's a good way to save them, because sometimes they'll take so much damage so quickly. There's no amount of reactions that's going to save them, but an enveloping mist will save them because it does so much healing. Okay, the last sections here are kind of just more for fun, but I theory crafted them regardless. Here's the 120% haste club. This is currently the club I'm in. This is where you can officially start using ERT major, cheesing out and essentially casting like 12 enveloping mist in the first 30 seconds of the fight and maintaining them throughout the entire fight's duration. This is where the majority of your healing starts becoming enveloping mist and not even vivify or redoing mist. And I'm sure that if you have this amount of haste, you could probably figure it out for yourself, but you essentially are using ERT's Major's Haste buff to allow you to get out 0.75 second enveloping mist very quickly, and then you're spending the rest of the fight just sort of hard focused on extending them, so much to the point where you would extend them at the cost of potentially extra renewing mist. You know, I've sat on 2 charges of renewing mist for like a minute straight because I was sub 4 seconds on the duration of my enveloping mist for like a whole minute, and I kept thinking, okay, if I use another global, they'll fall off, and then I fish for a reset, got the reset, extended them. And I'm like, oh, we're back to like 4 seconds again. I gotta fish for resets, and so it was worth it to maintain them despite not having any new renewing mist put up for a very long time, because the loss of 10 envelopings far exceeds the value of a couple renewing mist. I believe each enveloping mist is worth 5 renewing mist. So, yeah. I'm not going to really talk about this too much. It doesn't have too much pertinence to the average population. But if you want to read this, you can. Essentially, I talk about what the world at 140% haste will look like. And it's, of course, all theoretical math, or, theory crafting, if you will. But I actually think that when you get to 140% haste, or 160% haste, that mana will actually become relevant again, because you'll be able to cheese even the fights where there's long periods of downtime. So, for example, the first boss, you know how he flies up and you can't kick anything? I believe, the the rank 1 parsers in the future will have so much haste that they'll be able to ERT major and put all 20 enveloping mists back up really quickly, and then go back to kicking the boss. So essentially, each time the boss flies up, does his thing, that you all run back, boom, another 20 enveloping mists. And each time they do this, this would cost 104,000 mana, and so they would need an innervate for this moment, or they would need like a claw trinket or something. And the reason they would have 140% haste is they probably have like 6 expedients. So yeah, it's all theoretical. It was kind of fun just to think about and do some math about, but we won't see this for another month or 2. Although there is one Chinese monk already who's got around 140% average haste. So, of course. Yeah, you can see his parses. They're quite hysterical. There's some fights where Enveloping Mist was like 65% of his healing. Some pretty fun stuff. I think I only have 3 expedients, so I'm not in the club just yet, guys. Alright. Sorry for the rambling. Hopefully you guys learned something. I'll put a link in the description so you can check out. I know it's very complex to rattle off the rotations via YouTube, so you can take a good hard look at them. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this video wasn't too long. It's kind of a 2-parter, but whatever. Alright, this has been Mistwater. I'll see you guys. Happy healing.